Hello and welcome to No Drama Discipline, Calming the Chaos presentation. I'm Jennifer Sheridan, the Family Services Coordinator here at the Coleman Center in Petal, Mississippi. And I'm so glad to come today to talk to you guys just for a short period of time during our monthly parent education webinar all about discipline. Now, this is going to be several presentations, so this is just going to be part one. I think there's going to be 2 or 3 parts to this because discipline is such a big topic for all of us who parent, those of us who are caregivers, those of us who are teachers. Anytime you are in charge of children, you are going to find yourself in that role of disciplinarian, of the one who is having to help mold the behavior of children, help guide them into safety, keep them out of perilous situations. So whether or not you're a parent or you're a foster parent and you're watching this, you have so many responsibilities when you care for children, and discipline, I see, is just one aspect of it. But it is such a major role in our lives as caregivers that I think we need to spend some time thinking through this. Now, if you're like me and you became a parent, now I became a parent to 2 kiddos who were already in school age. And so I didn't have the baby years to guide them to start instilling some of these things. So I became a parent overnight. And while I had thought about discipline, while I had coached other parents on different strategies on discipline, being a social worker, there is nothing like experiencing it yourself as a parent. And although I had thought through so many strategies, my fallback was on what I had experienced as a child. Now, as I continued on into the parenting world and I really started looking at my children, I started thinking, they need something different that I'm not giving them. I could tell you theories, I could tell you strategies, I could tell you books that you could have read as a parent and it would help you so much. But it wasn't until I was experiencing the individual personalities of my children that I realized, okay, I cannot fall back on the strategies my parents used, even though they were really great parents. And I would say, yes, I'm so thankful to have had them parenting me. I really realized I'm going to have to do things differently. And even more so than my parents, I'm going to have to do things differently than all of my friends who I had seen modeled parenting for me in the years that I'd been married and were around their families and their children. And so that's when it really became more imperative that I dig in deeper. And so that's what we're going to do over the next several months during our monthly Parent Ed webinar, is talk about discipline. And today we're really going to set a foundation. Now we're going to see a couple scenarios towards the end of the webinar, and I'm going to give you 2 strategies to use in those scenarios. And but in the beginning, guys, we're going to lay the foundation for really what we're going to talk about this whole series. So first off, let's look at our rules of the road. So our rules of the road in this context, whether you're watching it live or you're watching the recording, is you can use the chat box to ask questions if you're watching this live. If you are watching the recording of this and you have questions, you hear something, you're like, I need to know more about this, or I need you to repeat this, or something like that, my contact information will be at the end of the presentation. You can feel free to email me, give us a call here at the Coleman Center. We'd be happy to talk through those with you. And so our second rule of the road is we're going to leave shame at the front door. Now, if you've probably said this yourself, but if you have been around parents of really any age, any context, you will probably start to hear some shame talk about them just talking about how they don't feel like they're doing good enough. You get people in a vulnerable moment and they start talking about parenting. They will tell you it is so difficult, right? Parenting is so challenging. It's one of the most challenging things that we do. And so I want us to table it. I want us to put shame out the front door where it belongs, away from us. And I want us to be open to some new ideas, some new strategies. Because if we get stuck in the cycle of feeling like we're never good enough, I'm never going to be a good enough mom, never going to parent my child, oh gosh, I hear this new discipline strategy and I should have been using this all along. we can't do that. We can only parent today, and tomorrow we'll wake up and we'll parent for that day, and on and on. And so we're going to be here in the present. We're going to maybe talk through some new ideas, or maybe reinforce some ideas that you guys have already talked about in your family, but maybe you've forgotten about, that you want to try with your kiddos. Whatever it may be, whatever level you're at, wherever you are in the spectrum of your parenting, I think we've got to be able to be vulnerable and open to new ideas, so that we can continue learning. I learn new things all the time. I'm constantly rethinking strategies that I want to try with my kids to see if it will help them to open up, be more authentic to me as their mom, and really to be more true to themselves as kiddos, rather than maybe a manipulative strategy that I've conjured up, or I thought, oh, this was a great idea, because it was what my parents did. But as I learn new strategies, I learn new things about the brain. I really want to always be a cheerful learner. And I want to pass that on to my kiddos too, and say, I used to do it this way, but I really want to change the way I do that, and be honest with them. So let's just dive right on in. Now, first, I feel like we've got to define discipline. So discipline comes from a Latin word. So here I have the two Latin words for pupil, student, or disciple. So if you really follow any kind of like religious tradition, you probably hear this term in whatever like spiritual community that you're in. And then we see this Latin word for to teach, to learn, to give instruction. Now, this is where this word discipline comes from. And I think one thing we've really kind of gone off the rails with is that we use discipline interchangeably with the word punishment. That's not what we're talking about here. I'm not a real big advocate of punishment at all. In fact, when I am having a bad moment with my kids, and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to give you a punishment. And then I start laughing, because I'm like, how am I going to punish them? It would be something crazy that would be so counterintuitive to what I want. It will just make me start laughing. And so now I use it as like a way to get humor back into my family when we're just having a tough time regulating. And so we use that more as a joke than an actual practice. But I think we've got to go back to this notion of discipline being a strategy that we are using to mold our children. Right? And that's what our Merriam-Webster definition gives us: molds or perfects the mental faculties or moral character. And that's what I want for my children. I want to train them. Just like, I had a friend the other day said she accidentally ran 10 miles. Y'all, she accidentally ran 10 miles. I laughed so hard, and I told her that was the most hilarious thing I've heard in a while. Because if I had accidentally ran 10 miles, I would probably be accidentally dead. But what she has done is she has trained her body, right? Over years and years and years, she has trained her body and is physically fit, and has taught her body how to deal with the stress of exercising, right? So she can just accidentally run 10 miles. I want my children to be like, oh, I just accidentally made the right choice. I don't even know why I made the right choice. I just did it. I don't know why I just got up and brushed my teeth when my mom told me to get up and brush my teeth, but I did. I just do the thing that my parents are asking, right? Not like they're robots, but because I have paved the way for them to see how they can be successful as kids when we follow directions, when we work well as a family. So not perfection, but working towards children whose brains are receiving information well, and being able to help them think calmly in order to execute something in the best way possible. And right? When mom is happy, everybody's happy. So the best way possible for them would be to just like, let's go brush your teeth. The first time I said that, right? So we're all about not really punishments or even really consequences. This is not what we're focusing on. I'm not going to give you a big list of like, these are the consequences that are appropriate to give, because we can see this is a more reactive approach versus a responsive approach. And that's what we want in discipline. So we're going to talk about through this whole series is how we can be responsive to our kids, how we can think about the motivations behind these negative behaviors, and then say like, how do I want to respond in a positive way so that it will eventually lead to a better thinking human being, which is what I want, and I think what you want for your kiddos too. All right, so let's take a look. Here are our 2 goals of discipline. So we got our first one is all about just getting our kids to cooperate and I just want you to do the right thing, right? I just want you to make the right choice. And so this is like holding hands when we cross the street or we walk in the parking lot, right? I just had a little fella did not want to hold my hand when we walked out in the parking lot, but that's the rule, right? And it's because I want all of my little people to be safe. So now my kiddos are older. I don't make them hold my hand because, gosh, they're almost as big or bigger than I am. And so it may be different things like I want you to do the chores when I ask you to do them, like in a more timely manner. So these are all short-term objectives. So we're talking about these external behaviors that we see on the outside, right? No hitting, no kicking, no spitting, those sorts of things. So our second goal of discipline is all about skill development and increasing that capacity for resiliency to take over and handle a situation that's maybe causing frustration, that's just challenging, or maybe creating like an emotional storm within our kiddos. And so we want to do this to prevent them losing control, right? That is what we want. We want our husbands to not lose control. I don't want to lose control when I feel emotional storm rising up in me, right? I feel ridiculous after I just lose it and I crack on everyone. It happens. And I mean, guys, I'm a therapist. So, right? So people will say, oh, you must be the perfect mom when I give them a strategy, And I say, no, I'm not. I lose it too because I too am learning also how to live in better relationship with people. And for me, it's 2 kids and a husband, right? Who I'm in very close relationship with. But it can also be a friendship. It could also, if I was back in the classroom, it would be me and my students throughout the day. It might be my friends and I when we go out to dinner and we talk about a hard subject. Our goals and discipline can carry on. Now, I've pretty much got goal number 1 in the bag, right? I can pretty much do the right thing and I can cooperate with the people who are in charge of me, right? My boss asks me to do something, follow through and do those things. But it's the second one I feel like we are all still working on. We're all still developing this capacity to manage our own emotions through difficult situations. Now, of course, as adults, we're experiencing this in such large ways, right? We're experiencing loss, we're experiencing relationship dynamics that our kiddos are experiencing, but on a microcosm if they've had a typical development. But think about our kiddos who have experienced just as much loss as maybe we have if we've lost a parent or if we've gone through a divorce. Our kiddos are still experiencing that, and yet they still don't have the brain capacity like we do in order to cope with these sorts of traumas. So from the book, No Drama Discipline, and if you don't have this book, this is a fantastic book to get. We're going to be using some of the strategies from this, but I'm going to be pulling from other sources as well. But No Drama Discipline by Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. Guys, we just finished a fall book review on this. You can find those videos on our YouTube page, linked on our Facebook page. By these same authors. Fantastic. So if you haven't gone through that, please do, or pass that along to someone. They haven't read the book and they're probably not going to read it, but maybe they'll listen to a book review of it. But here's a fantastic quote that I thought was great. So the authors say effective discipline means that we're not only stopping a bad behavior or promoting a good one, right? But also teaching skills and nurturing the connections in our children's brains that will help them make better decisions and handle themselves well in the future. And guys, that's what I want my kiddos to do. So let's talk for a second about spanking. Now, remember, I've got my email address at the end of the presentation. So if you completely disagree with this, go ahead and shoot me an email. Tell me how you disagree with it. But I'm here to tell you, spanking just doesn't work. It doesn't work to get us what we want. Now, I'm from the South. I grew up in the South. Spanking is a real big thing here. I don't know where you're watching this from, but it's really our go-to, right? And I would say because it's been our go-to for our parents, oftentimes it's our go-to for us. But each one of these theories tells us it just doesn't work. It increases hostility. It may make the child feel that we are rejecting them and erodes our attachment. Our kiddos are learning by imitating all the role models in their life. Well, if I'm their parent, I'm one of their biggest role models because I'm the one they're spending most of their time with. And so you can see each one of these theories is telling us it's just not working. Now, the behaviorist theory, you can see it's the fourth one listed. It says spanking follows immediately after every undesired behavior for it to actually be effective. So behaviorist theory says now you can get spanking to work, but in order for it to work, you would have to actually spank your child after every single undesirable behavior. Now, you have ever lived with children, you know when they are learning something, they are learning how to be in their bodies, they are learning how to be in a family, they can get on a roll and they can do a lot of undesirable behaviors. Now, if I spanked my kids after every one of them and on, like, let's just pick a Saturday, maybe a Saturday where we did basketball in the morning and then we had 2 birthday parties, and then we went and had dinner with grandma and grandpa, and then by the end of the night, do you think we're all having a great time? No, because everyone's tired and exhausted. Can you imagine how many times I would have to spank them in order for this to be effective, according to this behaviorist theory? So it's just not working for us. So we've really got to come back to the drawing page if that is our go-to. Now, I will have some parents say, like, well, I only use it in extreme circumstances. And to that, I say, if we're having extreme circumstances that warrant spanking, then we really have got to be better detectives to figure out what is going on in those extreme circumstances and how are we regulated during those extreme circumstances. Because if we're communicating that in anger when we're very upset or very disappointed that we strike someone else, then we're going to have a hard time dismantling that in the brains of our kiddos when they go to school and they're not able to strike someone. They're not able to spank someone else or hit someone else because they're frustrated or disappointed or just flat out angry. And so this is what we want to say to ourselves. We want parents to say, I'm on your team, even if I don't like your behavior. So that's the message I want to communicate to my kids always, even if it's not working out. I'm still on your team. It's not you against me. It's us against those behaviors. It's us against this big bad world out here. And then what I want the child to say to themselves, to me, if they're, using all their words, I want them to say, I'm loved even when I make a bad decision. I'm cared for even when I make a bad decision. My needs are met even when I make a bad decision. Because that's what I want. I want my kiddos to always feel like their needs are being met, because I do not want them to try to get those needs met somewhere else, especially when they're teenagers. So what we're going to do here, we're going to go over 2 different scenarios. Now, these are from parents. So if you have some scenarios or a question you want potentially answered in an upcoming webinar, you can email me again at the email at the end of the slideshow. And then maybe I will be able to get to your question. So these are just from some actual families that I know. I did not just make these up. So actual moms and dads who are in the fight. I just said, hey, what would be your questions? I'm doing this thing on discipline. And here's a couple that I picked for today. So from the parents, this is what one of the parents says. What do you do when a child flat out refuses to listen to you? You've already taken away privileges and are out of non-punishment options. That's an excellent question. If you have children, you have experienced this. I've never met a child that did not get their parents to this way, right? So we do a lot of choices here. I've done a video previously about doing controlled choices and how that can really empower our kids. But what happens when we've given the choices, we've taken away the privileges, everything is just like, we're out of options. We're kind of like at the end of our rope. And here's 3 questions I want you to ask. Number 1, why did my child act this way? What did your child get by throwing down in the aisle at Walmart? You know, like what did they get? What did your child get by screaming at you from across the room? What did your child get when they said no? And you've already taken away everything. They're like, fine, take it, take it. We have to be detectives in this and say to ourselves, what in the world are they getting out of doing this, out of making this choice? Seems like we've already taken away everything. Why did my child act this way? Now, this answer is going to vary. There's no, I'm sorry to say, there's not really just like this one pat answer and like, oh, choice A, take the road to the left, and choice B, take the road to the right. We're going to have to figure out, because question number 2 I want you to ask yourself is, what lesson do I want to teach in this moment? So what lesson do I want my child to learn? Well, if it's, I've taken away TV time, you can't read a book at night because you're not going to brush your teeth. And then what lesson do I want to teach my children? That dental hygiene is so important because nobody wants to smell your stinky breath. And I don't want you to have to get cavities. Like, I don't want you to get cavities and have to have fillings and that sort of thing. And so that's ultimately the lesson I want to teach, right? If maybe it's my kiddo is not going to brush their teeth and I've done everything. I've exhausted all my measures. Then number 3 is, how can I best teach this lesson? Well, if I'm in that moment of, let's say, the teeth brushing fiasco, which is a lot of our nights, right? It's like, second verse, same as the first. So how can I best teach this lesson? Well, it's not going to be when my child is disconnecting, using their downstairs brain, accessing their amygdala is taking over. It's not going to be then. It's going to be later on. Or it's going to be if I can get them out of that fear state and I get them laughing or joking. And then I'm like, well, what do maybe I want to teach them that. And I do that through all the Socratic methods. So I ask them questions. Why do you think I want you to brush your teeth? And they might be like, because the dentist told you have to. That's true. Why do you think the dentist wants you to brush your teeth? Because you heard that drill the last time, remember? Oh, and that little girl had to get a drill and shots in her mouth, and I don't want that to happen to you. And then it becomes, we're communicating about, why am I asking you to do this thing in the first place? Oftentimes our kiddos, because they have such little control over their lives, when they start recognizing that, then they start grasping at it. So oftentimes if we can kind of get to that explanation, excuse me, someone's trying to call me. They don't know I'm doing a webinar. But if we can kind of get to that explanation, then our kiddos can oftentimes see, this is why I'm having to do this. It's not just because I'm a mean mom, but this is why I'm having to do this. And I don't think we can disregard that. So three questions. So this next one is, what do you do when you offer a child choices? So remember I talked about the choices. We do that a lot. They flat out refuse to do anything you suggest, but they want something different, something that wasn't offered. Okay, and to this, we're going to use some TBRI strategies, and we're going to teach our child how to ask for a compromise. Now, if I've given a kiddo a choice between 1 or 2, and they say, can I ask for a compromise? If I'm like, I can go brush your teeth for you, or you can brush your teeth by yourself. Which one do you want to do? If they say, can I ask for a compromise? I'm always going to say yes. Yes to asking for a compromise, not yes to whatever it is, whatever crazy thing they're about to ask me. So I always say, yes, you can ask for a compromise. You can ask for anything you want. And if they say, can I please just finish coloring this before I go brush my teeth? Well, guys, if it's like 5 minutes of coloring, 100% I'm going to say yes, because guess what? I say no. We've got to get in bed. We have been getting in bed so late the past few nights. So you better get up and go do that now. Guess what? They are going to melt down. They're going to pitch a fit. They'll go statue, where your kids like become drilled to the floor and you're like, how are you this heavy? You were not this heavy 5 minutes ago. Guess what? That's going to take longer than 5 minutes, at least in my experience. So if I can kind of head that off, I can be proactive. I can be more responsive to what they need at that moment. Maybe it is to finish a task. I know sometimes kiddos, and especially I see this a lot in conflict in the school, is teachers are ready for their kids to move on to the next task. But when we ask a child to do something and then we don't give them enough time to complete it, it is so irrational to think that they're just going to be like, oh, okay, I'm just going to stop this and there's no need to finish this. You're right. Let me keep moving on to another task. No, it's so difficult, right? Because we've already emphasized how important it is that they keep up these tasks, they finish it, they do it all the way through, and then we're asking them to do the next thing. Well, for parents, we need to model that at home. How do we cope with that? So if it's something else not offered, then I'm going to teach them how to ask for a compromise. I'm going to say, if you'd like to ask for a compromise, you can. And this means we've already talked about how to do this at another time when they're like totally chill. It's like a good learning moment. And you're going to say, I'm going to teach you how to ask for a compromise. So when that comes up, you can do that. We can kind of negotiate. Now, we're negotiating to get needs met. And that's a skill like anything else. However, I'm not negotiating with a terrorist. Not going to happen, guys. I think that's like an American policy. I don't know, because we're not negotiating with terrorists. Like, my child is not the queen of the household or the king of the household, and he's telling me what he's going to do. No, he can ask. I'm still in control. I'm still going to say yes or no based on what their needs are. How healthy is this? So that is an excellent strategy, and it gets your kids thinking, which means they're thinking in their upstairs brain. They can make more reasonable choices. Now, these are for some kids. Now, I have four little quotes from 4 different kids, and I thought these were fantastic. And then I'm getting to a point at the end of all 4 of these. So this first one I asked, what do you think parents need to know about discipline? Super easy. This kiddo said, talk to them. I think that was talk to the kid after they did something wrong. Ask them why they did it. Give a good and reasonable punishment. Don't make the punishment over 2 weeks. Now, I thought that was really cute because it was like a very specific, like, don't make it over 2 weeks. But I love how they said, talk to them after they did something. Ask them why they did it. Okay, this next kiddo says, I asked them, how do your parents help you when you make bad choices? And they said, they talk to me about what I did. They do it with me. I think they talk to me when I get tucked into bed at night. And I said, is that the best time? And they said, yeah, that's the best time. So another one, talk to me about what I did. All right, what do you think is the most effective form of discipline? Now, this is an older child, so I knew that they would understand what I meant by effective form of discipline. Honestly, I don't think sending people to their room is an effective form of discipline because, like, really you're just isolating them from other people. It just doesn't really work for me. I don't quickly punish because sometimes it just makes me mad. Interesting. So they pointed out, like, isolating is not going to work. All right, what happens at your house when you make a bad choice? And then I gave an example because they were struggling. This was a younger child. And I said, let's say you hit your sister. What could your parents do to help you make a better decision next time? And they said they could show me a different way. Now, the string tying all 4 of these kiddos together is connection. Now, connection really is the key to all of this whole discipline shenanigans that we have got to get ourselves into as parents. If we're not connecting, if we are not connected, past tense have already done that. We're not trying to connect in the moment. All of these strategies are not going to work. Now, that means we as parents, as adults, have got to be super aware of what is going on inside of our own bodies and inside of our own minds. Because if we are unable to connect and be vulnerable, then we have work to do because we are wanting to teach children how to do this. Now, ultimately, we want them to increase their empathy because when we increase that capacity for empathy, that's when they're able to say, like, you know what? Mom is going to end up staying up all night worrying about me if I don't get home on time and make it to my curfew because I'm 16, I'm driving on the road, right? Now, lots of us are not in that position yet. I know I'm not, thankfully. But one day I will be. And one day I want my child to say, I'm going to respect my parents because I bet it's really hard for my mom to let me go off somewhere by myself. I want them to have that empathy. It starts now. I can't teach that at 16 like I can now in the small things. That starts with being connected with each other. Now, here are the references for this presentation. I'll put these on probably in our file section on our Facebook page at the Coleman Center. Now, our next part 2 is coming up Tuesday, December 3rd from 12:30 to 1 on here. It's going to be the second part of this. If you want to submit a question or scenario, message us on Facebook at the Coleman Center. You can email me there, jennifer.sheridan@pellschools.com. You can give us a call or visit us at the Coleman Center, 601-584-4704. Thanks so much for being with me today, and I'm so excited for us to do this No Drama Discipline series throughout the winter. Thanks, and have a super great day. Bye, guys.